Jace Thorne hunched over his workbench, surrounded by the comforting chaos of tools, cables, and half-assembled gadgets. The air aboard the salvage star was thick with the metallic tang of recycled oxygen, but Jace barely noticed as he fiddled with the latest piece of Tech-A malfunctioning plasma conduit he'd pulled from a derelict freighter. Fixing broken things was his life. It didn't make him rich, but it kept him sane in the endless monotony of deep space. The salvage star wasn't a glamorous ship. It was a bulky hauler, its hull patched together from years of scrapes with pirates, meteor storms, and careless piloting. Its mission was simple: find abandoned ships, strip them for parts, and sell the loot to the highest bidder. The crew, half a dozen rough-and-tumble scavengers, was more concerned with profit margins than adventure. For Jace, it was a means to an end. One more gig, he told himself, and maybe he'd finally save enough to buy a ship of his own. "Jace, you hearing this?" Captain Myra's voice crackled over the intercom. She had a voice like gravel and an attitude to match. "What is it now?" Jace replied, wiping grease off his hands. "Distress signal coming from the Obsidian Nebula. Strong signal, too. Real old tech, by the looks of it." Jace's ears perked up. The Obsidian Nebula was notorious a swirling mass of gas and debris that had swallowed countless ships over the centuries. Few dared venture into its depths, and those who did rarely came back. "Who's calling for help out there?" he asked, already walking toward the cockpit. "That's the thing," Myra said as Jace entered the room. The holographic display showed a ship's outline, a massive, angular silhouette glowing faintly against the backdrop of the nebula. "That's a Carallax vessel. A royal one, if I'm not mistaken." The name hit Jace like a shockwave. The Carallax were a long-extinct alien race. Their empire collapsed centuries ago. Their technology was legendary, far beyond anything humanity had developed. And their ships? Priceless relics. "Wait, are you saying that's the Vestra crown?" Jace asked, leaning over the display. "Could be," Myra said, lighting a cigar. "Or it could be a trap. Plenty of stories about pirates faking signals to lure in scavengers." The crew gathered around, muttering among themselves. Zeke, the ship's grizzled mechanic, shook his head. "It's cursed. Everyone knows the Carallax ships are bad luck. Every fool who's gone after one ended up dead or worse." "Yeah, no thanks," chimed in Vexa, the ship's navigator. "I'm not risking my neck for some ancient wreck." Jace clenched his fists. He knew they were being cowards, but he couldn't entirely blame them. The Obsidian Nebula was dangerous, and the stories about Carallax ships were unsettling. Still, the opportunity was too good to pass up. A ship like that could hold treasures and secrets that could change his life forever. "I'll go," Jace said, his voice cutting through the chatter. The room went silent as everyone turned to stare at him. "Are you serious?" Myra asked, narrowing her eyes. "Dead serious. Give me one of the pods. I'll check it out alone." The captain puffed on her cigar, steadying him. "You're crazy, Thorne. But fine. It's your funeral. Take pod 3. As the crew dispersed, some shaking their heads and others muttering about his foolishness, Jace headed to the hangar. The pod was small but sturdy, equipped with basic navigation and a minimal life support system. Perfect for short trips but useless if something went catastrophically wrong. "Hey, Jace," Zeke called out, handing him a battered toolkit. "You sure about this? That ship's been sitting out there for centuries. If it's not cursed, it's probably falling apart." "Falling apart is my specialty," Jace replied with a grin. "Besides, if it's cursed, I'll send you a postcard from the afterlife." With that, he climbed into the pod, sealing the hatch behind him. The hangar doors opened, revealing the swirling blues and purples of the nebula. Jace took a deep breath and launched. The journey into the nebula was both awe-inspiring and nerve-wracking. The pod's sensors beeped constantly as it navigated through pockets of dense gas and debris fields. Jace kept his eyes on the radar, which was slowly zeroing in on the distress signal. The closer he got, the more the ship came into view. The Vestra crown was like nothing Jace had ever seen. Its design was impossibly intricate, with spires and wings that seemed to shimmer as if made of liquid metal. The ship was massive, easily 10 times the size of the salvage star. But it was also clearly damaged, its hull scarred, its spires broken, and its lights flickering weakly. "Holy hell," Jace muttered. "This thing's a work of art." As he approached, the distress signal grew louder, a rhythmic pulse that seemed almost alive. Jace activated the pod's docking clamps, attaching himself to a breach in the hull. The ship groaned under the weight, but it held. "Here goes nothing," he said, grabbing his toolkit and opening the pod's hatch. The air inside the ship was thin but breathable, with an odd metallic tang. The corridors were dark, illuminated only by faint glimmers of alien light embedded in the walls. The architecture was unlike anything Jace had ever seen, organic, almost alive, with flowing patterns and shapes that defied human logic. His handheld scanner pinged, pointing him toward the source of the distress signal. Jace followed it through winding corridors, past strange machinery and silent, towering statues. The further he went, the more he felt like he was walking into something ancient and sacred. Finally, he reached a massive chamber. At its center was a throne of liquid crystal, glowing faintly in the darkness. Slumped on the throne was a figure, a towering alien with shimmering, translucent skin and glowing eyes that flickered weakly. Jace froze, his breath catching in his throat. The alien stirred, its voice echoing in his mind. "Human, you have come. Will you help me?" Jace swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "Depends. What do you need?" The alien's eyes glowed brighter. "My ship, it is broken. My kingdom, lost. Will you restore it?" Jace hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "If it's broken, I can fix it." Little did he know, that one decision would change his life and the fate of the galaxy forever. The glow of the alien throne filled the chamber with an otherworldly light. Jace took a cautious step forward, his scanner trembling in his hand. The Carallax King shifted on his crystalline throne, his translucent body flickering like a dying flame. His form was strange yet majestic, a combination of insect-like limbs, bioluminescent patterns, and flowing, semi-liquid appendages that pulsed rhythmically. "Human," the king's voice resonated directly in Jace's mind, bypassing sound altogether. It was layered and deep, carrying the weight of centuries. "You are the first to answer my call in over 1,000 cycles. I commend your courage." Jace swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet the alien's glowing eyes. "To be honest, I'm not sure if it's courage or stupidity," he said, his voice echoing faintly in the vast chamber. "But I'm here. What do you need?" The alien gestured with a claw-like appendage, and the walls of the chamber came to life. Patterns of light and alien symbols swirled across the crystalline surfaces, forming what appeared to be a holographic display. It showed the Vestra crown in its prime ship of grandeur and power, gliding through the stars like a god's chariot. Then the image shifted, showing the ship in ruin, systems failing, fires consuming its hulls, and strange, shadowy figures attacking its crew. "My ship," the king said, his voice heavy with grief. "The Vestra crown, jewel of the Carallax Empire, was the last hope of my people. We fled the cataclysm, carrying the essence of our civilization. But we were betrayed. Saboteurs infiltrated my crew, releasing a virus into the ship's systems. It spread like a plague, corrupting our AI and disabling our defenses." Jace frowned, studying the images. "The virus, it's still active?" The king nodded slowly. "Yes. It has rendered the ship inert. My people, my court, they perished one by one. The ship's life support systems failed. Only I remain, sustained by this throne, a final act of defiance against death." Jace's stomach churned at the thought of an entire civilization wiped out, reduced to one solitary figure clinging to survival. "Why didn't you send the distress signal earlier?" he asked. "I did," the king said. "But the nebula distorts transmissions. It is a miracle you even received it. Others may have heard the call over the centuries, but they chose to ignore it or were too late." Jace felt a pang of anger. The thought of others passing up this opportunity or this responsibility filled him with determination. "Okay," he said, adjusting the strap of his toolkit. "What do you need me to do?" The king raised one of his glowing appendages, and a thin tendril of light extended from it, connecting to Jace's handheld scanner. Information poured into the device: schematics, system diagnostics, and error reports written in a strange alien language that Jace couldn't begin to decipher. "You are an engineer," the king said. "Your kind builds and repairs. I have seen this in your people's history. With my guidance, you will mend the Vestra crown." Jace examined the schematics on his scanner. The ship's systems were impossibly complex, far beyond anything he'd worked on before. Yet, as the king spoke, the diagram seemed to make a strange kind of sense, as if his mind were being tuned to understand the alien technology. "The virus has crippled 3 key systems," the king continued. "The power core, the navigation matrix, and the ship's AI. Each must be restored in sequence, or the ship will remain lost." Jace sighed, already feeling the weight of the task ahead. "And what happens if I fail?" The king's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. "Then the Vestra crown will collapse. The antimatter core will implode, consuming the ship and likely you as well." "Great," Jace muttered, running a hand through his hair. "No pressure." The king extended another tendril of light, this one touching Jace's forehead. A warm, electric sensation coursed through him, and suddenly his mind was flooded with knowledge. The schematics, the systems, the intricacies of Karolak's technology, all of it became clear. It was overwhelming, but it also gave him a glimmer of hope. "This is a neural interface," the king explained. "Through it, I can share my knowledge with you. Use it wisely." Jace blinked, still processing the influx of information. "All right. First things first, I need access to the power core. If it's unstable, none of the other systems will matter." The king gestured again, and a section of the chamber's wall slid open, revealing a narrow corridor. "Follow this path. It will lead you to the core chamber. But beware, the virus has corrupted parts of the ship's defenses. They may see you as an intruder." "Of course it has," Jace muttered, grabbing his toolkit. He turned to the king. "Why me? Why didn't anyone else come to help?" The king's eyes flickered, a strange mix of sadness and gratitude. "Your kind is rare among the stars. Humans, you are builders, creators, problem solvers. And you, Jace Thorne, possess a spark that others lack. Whether it is fate or coincidence, I do not know. But you are here, and I believe you can succeed where others have failed." Jace swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. "Well, I hope you're right. Let's get to work." As he stepped into the corridor, the weight of his decision settled heavily on his shoulders. He was alone on an ancient alien ship, tasked with repairing technology that defied human understanding, guided by the last survivor of a fallen empire. The odds were stacked against him, but Jace Thorne wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. "All right, Vestra crown," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see what you've got." The corridor stretched out before him, pulsing faintly with alien light, leading him deeper into the heart of the ship and into a danger he couldn't yet imagine. The corridor leading to the Vestra crown's power core was unnervingly quiet. The faint hum of residual energy pulsing through the walls was the only sound, a reminder of the ship's once mighty systems now reduced to a flicker of their former glory. Jace gripped his toolkit tightly, the glowing alien schematics in his neural interface overlaying his vision like a heads-up display. "This is fine," he muttered to himself, trying to stave off the creeping anxiety. "Just another busted ship. Except it's an alien superstructure, an accursed nebula, with a homicidal virus. As if summoned by his thoughts, the ship's dim lighting flickered ominously, and the corridor seemed to stretch longer. Jace stopped in his tracks, his handheld scanner emitting a faint warning tone. Defensive systems detected, it chirped. Jace didn't need the scanner to know that. The walls around him suddenly shifted, transforming into angular panels that opened to reveal dormant alien drones. Their surfaces were sleek and black, with jagged edges that looked sharp enough to cut through steel. As they powered up, their glowing red eyes turned toward him in unison. Great. Hostile sentinels, Jace muttered, already running through his options. The drones whirred to life, their limbs unfolding into jagged weapons that hummed with energy. Jace had seconds to act. Thinking quickly, he yanked a plasma torch from his toolkit and aimed it at the nearest drone. The torch flared to life, spitting a bright stream of plasma that struck the drone's eye, sending it spiraling to the ground in a shower of sparks. "Gotcha," he shouted, but his victory was short-lived. The other drones surged forward, their movements fast and precise. Jace ducked behind a bulkhead, fumbling through his toolkit. His neural interface provided a real-time scan of the drones, highlighting their weak points. "Patch, you there?" he called out, activating his outdated AI assistant. "Right here, boss." Patch's cheerful voice echoed in his ear. "What's the crisis today?" "Angry alien death drones." "Can you hack their systems?" "Easy peasy. Just give me 30 seconds. Jace didn't have 30 seconds, but he'd take what he could get. He rolled out of cover, tossing a modified EMP grenade he'd rigged together on the fly. The device detonated with a loud crack, releasing a pulse that temporarily disabled the drones. "Patch, you'd better be quick," he shouted, sprinting past the disabled sentinels toward the power core chamber. Behind him, the drones began to stir, their systems rebooting faster than he'd hoped. "I'm in," Patch announced triumphantly. "Redirecting their targeting systems, and done. They'll think you're one of them. For now." Jace turned around to see the drones pause mid-movement, their glowing red eyes flickering before dimming entirely. They folded back into their storage compartments as if nothing had happened. "Nice work, Patch," Jace said, catching his breath. "Remind me to upgrade you when we get out of this." "Promises, promises," Patch quipped. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jace focused on the task ahead. The power core chamber was vast, its walls lined with glowing conduits that pulsed in sync with the ship's weakened heartbeat. At the center of the chamber, suspended in a shimmering energy field, was the antimatter core-age swirling sphere of chaotic light encased in alien machinery. The core flickered erratically, sending out bursts of unstable energy that made the entire room feel like it was on the verge of collapse. "All right," Jace muttered, scanning the core. The readings were worse than he'd feared. "It's barely holding together. One wrong move and we're all toast." The schematics in his neural interface highlighted the core stabilizers, which were riddled with corrupted systems. The virus had infected nearly every subsystem, disrupting the delicate balance needed to contain the antimatter. To make matters worse, the ship's self-repair mechanisms were trying to fix the core, but their corrupted programming was only making things worse. "Patch, I need you to isolate the stabilizers from the repair systems. I can't work on them while they're fighting me." "On it, boss. But, you've got about 10 minutes before this whole thing goes kaboom." "No pressure." Jace gritted his teeth and got to work. He pried open the access panels on the core stabilizers, exposing a tangle of alien circuits and conduits. The technology was unlike anything he'd seen, but the King's neural interface made it strangely intuitive. Using a combination of human tools and alien devices, Jace began recalibrating the stabilizers. Sweat poured down his face as he worked, the room growing hotter with each passing second. The core's energy flared unpredictably, sending shock waves that rattled the chamber. At one point, a conduit near Jace's hand exploded, sending a spray of sparks into the air. Patch, status update, he shouted, his hands moving frantically over the stabilizer. I've isolated the stabilizers, Patch said, but the virus is adapting. If I don't keep it busy, it's gonna crash the whole system. Then keep it busy. Jace growled, connecting the final circuit on the stabilizer. The device hummed to life, its glow stabilizing. 1 down, 2 to go. He moved to the next stabilizer, repeating the process as the core's energy flares grew more violent. Alarms blared throughout the chamber, warning of imminent collapse. Jace's hands trembled as he worked, the pressure mounting with every second. The final stabilizer was the trickiest. Its circuits were completely fried, and Jace had to jury-rig a bypass using parts from his toolkit. The makeshift solution was crude, but it worked. The stabilizer powered on, its glow joining the others in a synchronized rhythm. Stabilizers are online. Jace shouted. Good news. Patch chimed in. Bad news, the virus is trying to jump into the core. If it gets in there, we're toast. Jace's mind raced. The king had mentioned that the ship's AI was the key to controlling the virus. If he could reboot the AI, it might be able to purge the infection. But doing so would require a direct connection to the core, a risky move that could backfire spectacularly. Patch, can you hold the virus off for 2 minutes? 2 minutes? I'll need to perform a miracle, but sure. Jace ran to the core's control terminal, activating the neural link interface. The connection was immediate and overwhelming, his mind flooding with data as he tapped into the ship's central systems. He could feel the virus clawing at the edges of the core, a dark, malevolent force that seemed almost alive. Accessing AI mainframe, Jace muttered, navigating through the corrupted systems. The AI was fragmented and weak, its programming barely functional. But there was enough left to launch a reset. Come on, he urged, his fingers flying over the alien controls. The core's energy surged violently, and for a moment, Jace thought it was too late. Then, with a final keystroke, the AI rebooted. The chamber flooded with light as the core stabilized, its chaotic energy replaced by a steady, rhythmic pulse. Core stabilized, the AI announced in a calm, synthetic voice. Virus containment protocols engaged. Jace collapsed to the floor, his chest heaving. He'd done it barely. The Vestra Crown's heart was beating once more. You're alive, boss, Patch said, relief evident in its voice. And so am I. Win-win. Jace grinned weakly. Yeah. Let's hope the next part's easier. He didn't believe that for a second. The Vestra Crown seemed to awaken with renewed life as its power core stabilized, casting a soft, golden glow throughout the ship's corridors. Jace leaned against the console, exhaustion weighing down every muscle. He wiped the sweat from his brow and took a moment to marvel at the alien systems humming to life around him. The ship felt alive, like a slumbering beast roused after centuries of decay. Powers restored, Jace muttered to himself, his voice hoarse. Now, to deal with the rest of this mess. Correction, you dealt with an unstable antimatter core without blowing yourself up, Patch chimed in, its chipper tone cutting through the quiet. Which means you've earned a celebratory drink if we weren't trapped in an alien death trap. Thanks for the pep talk, Patch, Jace said dryly, pushing himself off the console. The Carallax King's voice echoed in his mind. Human. You have achieved what others dared not even attempt. The ship's core is stabilized, but your work is not yet complete. Jace sighed. Yeah, I figured. What's next? The virus remains a threat. It must be eradicated from the Vestra Crown systems. This requires access to the ship's central AI matrix. It resides in the throne room. Jace stiffened. Wait, your throne room? The one you've been sitting in this whole time? The king's glowing eyes flickered, a silent confirmation. Jace groaned. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? He made his way back through the now illuminated corridors, marveling at the ship's beauty as he passed. The walls were etched with flowing patterns of light that shifted and danced, forming intricate alien glyphs. The ship no longer felt eerie, it felt like a monument to a lost civilization, a civilization Jace was slowly bringing back to life. As he entered the throne room, the Carallax king rose from his crystalline seat, his towering form pulsing with renewed energy. The throne itself shifted, its crystalline surface retracting to reveal an intricate console beneath. At its center was a glowing sphere pulsing with light and dark energies that Jace recognized as the ship's AI core. The AI is the ship's mind, the king explained. It was corrupted by the virus centuries ago. You must enter its neural network and purge the infection. Enter the network? Jace asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean jack into that thing directly? The king nodded. The neural interface you now carry will allow you to merge temporarily with the AI. But be warned, the virus will resist you. It will take on forms, illusions, designed to break your mind. Jay stared at the glowing sphere, his gut twisting with unease. He wasn't exactly a fan of mind melding with alien technology, but he'd come too far to back out now. All right, he said, taking a deep breath. Let's do this. The king extended a tendril of light toward Jace, connecting it to the neural implant he'd received earlier. Instantly, Jace's vision blurred, and the throne room dissolved around him. He felt himself falling, his consciousness pulled into a swirling void of light and sound. Jace landed in a surreal landscape of shifting patterns and glowing circuits. It was the AI's neural network, a vast and chaotic domain that seemed both infinite and claustrophobic. Streams of data flowed like rivers, and fragments of Carallax memories floated by visions of their empire, their art, their people. This is incredible, Jace muttered, spinning around to take it all in. His awe was short-lived. The virus made itself known almost immediately. It appeared as a writhing, black mass, tendrils of corruption snaking through the network and infecting everything it touched. The tendrils morphed into shadowy figures, humanoid in shape but featureless, their presence radiating malice. You do not belong here, a voice boomed, deep and guttural. It echoed from all directions, shaking the very fabric of the network. Leave or be consumed. Yeah, not happening, Jace said, gripping his toolkit. He wasn't sure how tools would work in a digital realm, but he wasn't about to go down without a fight. The shadowy figures lunged at him, their forms distorting as they charged. Jace ducked and rolled, instinctively pulling a plasma torch from his belt, except it wasn't a torch anymore. In this realm, it had transformed into a glowing weapon, a blade of pure energy. All right, I can work with this, Jace said, gripping the weapon tightly. The battle was intense. Jace fought his way through the shadowy figures, cutting through their tendrils and dodging their attacks. With each strike, the virus recoiled, its grip on the network loosening. But the more he fought, the more the landscape shifted, growing darker and more chaotic. You cannot win, the virus taunted, its voice morphing into a twisted version of the king's. You are nothing but a frail human, unworthy of this power. Jace gritted his teeth, ignoring the taunts as he pressed forward. He reached the core of the network, where the virus had wrapped itself around the AI's central node like a serpent. The node pulsed weakly, its light nearly extinguished. Time to finish this, Jace said. He raised his energy blade and plunged it into the heart of the virus. The reaction was immediate. The virus shrieked, its tendrils flailing wildly as it began to unravel. The shadowy figures disintegrated, and the corrupted code dissolved into streams of light. The network brightened, its chaotic patterns stabilizing into harmonious flows of data. Jace felt himself being pulled back, his consciousness snapping out of the network and returning to the throne room. He stumbled, catching himself on the console as the king's glowing eyes watched him with approval. It is done, the king said, his voice filled with reverence. The Vestra crown is whole once more. The ship came fully alive, its systems humming with power and its lights blazing brightly. The king stepped forward, towering over Jace but radiating gratitude rather than intimidation. "Human," the king said, his voice solemn. "You have done what no other could. You have restored the Vestra crown and ensured that my people's legacy will endure. For this, you deserve a reward befitting your courage." The king raised a hand, summoning a glowing sphere of energy. It floated toward Jace, hovering just above his chest. "This is the crown's heart," the king explained. "It holds the knowledge of my people, our science, our art, our history. With it, you will carry the legacy of the Karalax Empire." The sphere merged with Jace, a warm energy spreading through his body. His mind was flooded with knowledge blueprints for advanced technology, equations that defied human understanding, and visions of a long-lost civilization. Jace staggered, overwhelmed. "This is too much. You will learn to wield it," the king said. "And with it, you will shape the future." The king stepped back, his form beginning to fade. "I must leave now. The Vestra crown will carry me to my homeworld, where I will begin the long work of rebuilding. But should you ever need me, send a signal. I will answer." The ship's hyperdrive activated, the stars outside the throne room blurring into streaks of light. Jace watched as the king vanished, leaving him alone in the now quiet ship. Back aboard the salvage star, Jace's crewmates stared in stunned silence as he recounted his tale. Though they doubted his story, the technology he carried with him and the quiet confidence in his eyes was proof enough. Jace Thorne was no longer just a scrapper. He was a keeper of ancient knowledge, a bridge between humanity and the stars. And his journey was only beginning.